All right, all right. I'm Georgianne Thomas. I am I am the executive producer of an award-winning movie, Foot Soldiers: The Class of 1964. The movie was done because, as a student at Spelman College, I wanted to, I wanted people to know what happened, what we did when we followed the Atlanta student movement leadership, as with Dr. Brown, Charles Black, Lonnie King. There were so many of them that led us, and we were freshmen. We were first-year students. I was just out of Gary, Indiana, just out of high school, came down here to go to school to follow my mother at Spelman, follow my father at Morehouse, and I came to a movement that I didn't know I was coming into. I thought I was coming to Spelman College to follow my mom. When I got here, I found out that something else was going on. They had colored and white signs. I thought I was a white girl. I thought I had white, plus I had white friends. I had some kind of financial stability that I had white teachers in high school. So I thought everything was fine. And when I crossed that Mason-Dixon line and got off that train, and it says in the movie, my movie talks about what happened. I see a colored and white sign, which means nothing to me. I see a white man in there mopping the floor. I'm thinking he's just a white man. He could tell me why nobody's here to meet me at Spelman. How am I going to get to Spelman? Yes. And when I opened the door, I saw the look on his face, but I thought he was just saying, what is she going to ask me? I didn't know the look on his face was, why is this Negro, this black woman, this N-word coming in the door that distinctly says white? Yes. And that's where the movie starts. And it was your leadership, you and Charles Black and Lonnie King. I had to do it. I felt compelled once I got over to Spelman and heard the stories and heard everything that's happening. I felt compelled to join with the movement. And so that is why today it's more important to me to be sitting with you, Dr. Brown, and Charles Black. I see him all the time. Yes. So he could not be with us today. He'll be in a later interview. But to be sitting with you because you had already met Dr. King, and in my research, and you had already met Dr. King, you had already met Medgar Evers, you had already done so much before you came to Morehouse. Yeah. So the thing is, when you came to Morehouse, you were much better prepared than I was. You knew where you were coming. You knew what was going to happen. You knew what you had some kind of desire in your heart, in your soul to make a difference. I came to Spelman like I'm a Spelman woman, okay? Yes. And so I am just now, I look back on it, and I just like to know, when you got in his class, how did you feel? You said, my goodness, I've already done this, and now I'm taking a class with Dr. King?
Well, I was excited about being in the class because we had been taught by our mentors to give a reason for the hope that is in you. And that is why, before we sat down, our sit-down movement was different from any movement in the nation. Why? I already knew about the sit-down movement, for it did not start in Greensboro, North Carolina in 1960. In San Francisco in 1956, there were persons there from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Clara Luper, who was the advisor to the Oklahoma City, Oklahoma Youth Council. Herbert Wright, who was National Youth Director. And we were talking about what youth could do to break down this evil of segregation. They were to do public accommodations, and I was to get involved in breaking down injustices and discrimination in public education in Mississippi. We were given an orientation session. And what happened is that after my being in San Francisco, I discovered that the youth of Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, had already sat down on August the 28th. I repeat, August the 28th, in 1958
Oh my goodness.
in Oklahoma City. Also in Louisville, Kentucky, and Wichita, Kansas. All of this is documented. I got the record from the Library of Congress. So this is nothing made up. Fast forward. I was a delegate to the National Convention of NAACP, the 50th anniversary meeting in New York. And in New York City, a busload of young people converged on the convention center from Oklahoma City. From Oklahoma City, I repeat, to give their report at the convention about their successes. And there was a young man there named Ezella Blair, who was an alternative youth delegate from Greensboro, North Carolina. And after he heard those young people giving their excellent reports, he was fired up, ready to go back home
Yes.
to do the same thing. But when he got back as an entering freshman at A&T, he couldn't get those other students to go with him. They were scared, naturally. But on February the 1st, 1960, he got 3 others to go with him.
Yes, he did.
That is the accurate history.
Yes.
And they sat down.
Yes, they did.
So I repeat again, from the white press, it was 1960. But those of us who were in the struggle, who were at that convention,
And those of us who know it now.
yes, knew what was the real history. It was not his story, but it was us living and telling our story.
Yes. Which is what we're doing now.
Yes, telling the story.
We have to tell our truth.
That's it.
And when you walked in class with Dr. King, what did you say on that day? Because you already had met him.
We were in awe and wonder to be sitting there. And that class was co-taught by my mentor,
Dr. Sam Williams.
Samuel Woodrow Williams,
Yes.
who was pastor of the historic
Friendship.
Friendship Baptist Church.
I barely passed his class, by the way.
He taught philosophy, and he was known for giving out flags.
Yes.
Yups.
I think I barely got a C, and that was like an A.
I don't know. I know.
And keep in mind that I was at Spelman while you were over here
boy.
at Morehouse, and while you were in the class with Dr. King, I was matriculating. I was a sophomore. I came out of class of '64, and you know I was looking at these names. You had Barbara Adams,
Yes.
Benjamin Berry,
Yes.
Charles Black, Horace Julian Bond,
That's right.
Amos Brown, Graham Pringle, Mary Worthy, and Willie Wright. There were only 2 women from Spelman. Is it my understanding that you all were handpicked?
That's right, because we were student leaders. And what happened, it was a suggestion of Dr. Benjamin Elijah Mays that Dr. King, after relocating back home, would sit down and do some reflecting and teaching before he went to the next level in the civil rights movement. And from that suggestion of Dr. Mays, Dr. Samuel Woodrow Williams was chosen to be the co-teacher.
So how many times it was a whole semester, right?
That's right.
So
It was- that was-
most of the time was
That
it Dr.
ni-
Williams?
That was,
or
1962. Dr. Williams was there when Dr. King had to go to be a part of the movement again. But when he came back, intermittently, it was always a day of great expectation.
I want to ask a question that I want to read a quote. It says, and I need to read from this. I have a final question. I have a question. David Garrow's Pulitzer Prize-winning book, Bearing the Cross, Martin Luther King Jr. and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, has a Martin Luther King quote that's not often stated. Let me read this quote. I know I would not always be a leader. I will not always be in the public eye and in the news. I feel that there are many things just as important ahead for me, and I have almost an eagerness to give the rest of my life to the pursuit of the cultural, intellectual, and aesthetic ideals that I have pulled away from by this struggle. When I read that quote, what came to my mind was he's been pulled away from the pursuit of cultural, intellectual, and aesthetic ideas. And my question to you is, do you think the class feel a secret void based on what you just said about Dr. Mays asking him, but do you think it feel a secret void to pursue the intellectual, to work towards to be in a place where he could be a part of rigorous scholarship?
Yes, and not only that, Dr. King wanted to be a lawyer.
Ah,
That was his aspiration.
I love my question. Thank you for that answer.
And not a preacher.
Yes.
And why? Because, and this is stated in other documents, many ministers were not well trained. And he was not impressed by those who were only hoopers, tuners, moaners, and hackers. But when he met Dr. Benjamin Elijah Mays,
Yes.
who was a scholar
Yes.
and was a spiritual man,
Yes.
he discovered that a black preacher could be spiritual, scholarly, and relational
Yes.
to the needs of his people.
Yes.
And that many don't know that. And he could have been pastor of a great church
Like you are.
like Riverside. He could have been a professor at some well-celebrated and known institution of learning. But he gave up all of that to be a part of the struggle.
And that is why that quote to me was so powerful.
Yeah.
And I'm thank you for your answer. Can you describe a memorable moment from the class that was stuck with you?
When he one day discussed with us the idea of personalism that he acquired up at Boston University when he was studying for his PhD.
Personalism as in category of the person?
Yes, meaning that every human being was and is a person. And regardless to how there may be external differences of race, of gender, and of sexual orientation, we should treat every person as having worth and dignity.
Yes.
That's what he discovered that from Brightman at Boston University, a Methodist preacher, scholar, personalism. But right now, fast forward, Donald Trump and his minions, and even persons of the Confederacy, never saw black people as being persons.
Are humans at all? You're right.
We were things, we were tools.
We were human cargo crossing the
That's right.
transatlantic.
Yes.
We've never been seen as a human.
Human beings. We were a vast cog in a plantation machinery. We were to make cotton king and productive for this nation's economy.
Your final exam question: would Adam Smith or Karl Marx support the nonviolent theory of social change? I'm gonna say it again. The final exam question for the class was one question: would Adam Smith or Karl Marx support the nonviolence theory of social change? And I asked that question not necessarily for a complete answer, but seemingly like it would be a yes or no answer for me in terms of the two thoughts, the Smith and Marx.
Those
They were.
two persons were materialists.
Yes. So why do you think he asked this one question?
It coincided with the notion of personalism.
Okay. And that's
They didn't see us as being persons. Putin today doesn't see human beings as persons
no.
at all. That man from South Africa who gave us the Tesla,
Oh, Musk.
Musk, doesn't see black people as being persons, and neither does Donald Trump. The policeman, and that one policeman who put his knee
George Floyd.
on George Floyd's.
We were
Hey.
not people.
No, it was a thing. It was an animal.
It had to be that because why would we need to have separate bathrooms, separate water fountains?
Yes.
Because we all are humans.
Yes.
And so we have human needs, and the human body operates the same regardless of
Yes.
the melanin.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that was just a contrary. That let us know that we were never seen as a human being.
No. Putin killing all those people. Over there in that war. Doesn't see those people as being persons at all.
And that is why when I went to march, Dr. Brown was marching as a young woman. When the man came and put the cigarette out on my arm, he jumped out the crowd. The Klan was waiting for us. He jumped out the crowd, put the cigarette out. The burn is still there on my arm. And he wanted me to react. But if you remember, we had training to not to react. And so I stood there and let him put the cigarette out. And I looked him dead in the eye. Now here I am, a young girl. We 16, 17, 18 years old.
That's right.
You know? But I let him put the cigarette out, and he wanted me to stop marching or doing something, but I would not stop. When he jumped back in the crowd, when he finished spitting on us and calling us the N-word and laughing because he had burned me, I kept walking. And I kept walking, thinking in my mind, one, my mother's going to kill me because I told her I wasn't doing all that. But secondly, I was thinking how much he hated me enough to call me an ashtray. I was still not human.
That's right. That's right.
So, I don't know. My next question, Dr. King had 6 principles of nonviolence. I found this document. Did he talk about those 6 principles in class?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes, even I remember the first one of the main ones was that you owe it to your perceived enemy to first go to him or her and talk. I remember that. Well, before going out to call them out, before going out there to demonstrate, you owed it to even the segregationists to sit down and reason.
Isn't it not in the Bible somewhere?
That's right.
It's in the Bible somewhere.
It's in Matthew
Okay. You know.
about going to your enemy.
Yes. Yes.
And if you can't resolve whatever the issue is, then
Yes.
you bring another person as a witness.
Yes. Yes. Let's have
And-
church, Dr.
and then,
Brown.
And then if you can't get it solved at that step, you go to the congregations of wider human family.
Yes. Yes.
And if you can't get it resolved there, you consider that person to be a heathen and leave them alone and make sure that you contain them and that it won't cause more injury and harm. to other innocent persons.
Amen. Amen.
Those steps very much were a part of his lecture.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And that's what was the guiding principle for our student movement
Yes.
here in Atlanta.
Yes.
You know what? When the presidents of the six institution heard that we were planning on doing what had been done in Greensboro, in Nashville, in 1960.
I know at Spelman they sent a letter home because my mama got that letter.
Yeah, and also they called us into Hawkins Hall.
Okay.
I was in the meeting.
Whoa.
I brought, where's that book? I brought a book of Marion Wright Edelman's memoirs.
Yes, yes, yes. Spelman.
And Marion Wright Edelman was a part of that group. Lonnie King,
Yes.
no relationship to Dr. King,
No.
but was a member of Ebenezer.
Yes.
They said to us, young people, we're not going to get in your way to try and stop you from demonstrating for your rights. But have you thought about, first you need to let the world know why you're doing what you're doing.
That's what Rosin Pope came in with the appeal.
That's right, but I was a part of that committee.
Oh, okay.
I was in the room, and Marion Wright Edelman mentions it. Somebody get my briefcase, and I want to get her book, Lanterns.
Mr. Gooden.
And she talks about the persons who inspired her, the icons who influenced her, and she mentions that meeting in her memoirs. That the presidents called us, I repeat, into Hawkins Hall and said to us, why not select a committee that will craft a document?
Oh, that's how it came about.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness.
And Dr. May said, and I will raise the money to have it published in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution.
Sure did. Full page.
That's right.
And New York picked it up free.
That's right. And Marion Wright Edelman said, talking about who was in the committee, she said there was Amos Brown, a bright, young NACPer. I was the youngest one in the room.
Wow.
And after Rosalind Pope did the word smithing,
Yes. Dr. Howard's in type, on the typewriter.
yes,
Julian Bond.
that's right, we were ready to submit that to the president.
Yes.
And after we submitted that document, and note, I want you to notice, it was not an appeal on civil rights.
No.
It was an appeal on human rights. See, we were global.
Yes.
We were concerned about everybody's right. We were never teen-archers, as they say in Mississippi, small, and only concerned about black folk.
Right. Human rights.
Human rights. And you know who else, going way back, who was concerned about human rights? The great Frederick Douglass.
Yes.
He spoke up for women's rights. He also spoke up against the Chinese Exclusionary Act. Here he's
Mongolian.
out
I remember
of
that.
slavery. But I have a copy of the document in which Frederick Douglass gave this eloquent speech pleading to America to not be hypocritical and to respect the Chinese and welcome them into the country.
Yes.
That was in 1882.
Yes.
And Dr. King was the same. That's why he came out against that Vietnam War. He was concerned about the Vietnamese children and families that were being bombed over there. And even though some blacks did not go with him on that, but he stood his ground.
Yes, he did.
After he delivered that sermon at Riverside Church,
Yes.
it was then that the powers went after him to kill him.
Yes, they did.
Yes. So that idea, that notion of personalism, it came from Dr. Brightman up there at Boston. I was impacted on that. So even in my ministry in San Francisco, I was one of the unsaved Cecil Williams pastors who stood up for gay rights and marriage equality.
In the closing, could you tell us, as a word to young people who are watching, the Gen X and the people who have looked at what we did, do you have a word that would carry them forward? Or what would you like to close this out to say for our young people here in the room, for Morehouse College and Spelman? We are at Morehouse College now. What would be your final word that could give our young people the kick that we received when we were 16, 17, and 18
we were
years old?
challenged to justify our existence by rendering service to others.
Yes.
That's number one. We were challenged to use your degree to help somebody and not to show off, not to exhibit it as being you are more important than anyone else. And as Shirley Chisholm said, service
Yes.
is a fee
Yes.
that you pay for existence.
Amen.
That's it. And that song said, if I can help somebody
If I can help somebody along the way.
as I pass on, then my living shall not be in vain.
We got Dr. Monique Earl Lewis in here, and I know she could sing that song for us if we needed it. My living should not be in vain.
Oh, yes.
I want these young people to know that I am 82 years old, and I have lived the life that the movement put in my spirit.
Yes, yes.
And I too have never, when we did the movie, Dr. Brown, Foot Soldiers, the class of 1964, do you know that my classmates, many of them, had never told their story? Because we did the work.
Yes.
We did it because we were supposed to do it.
Yeah.
And all of us in the movie, we went on to teach, to preach, and to be African queens and princesses and carry our people forward. And now we are telling the story because for me, it is important that we document
Yes.
because of revisionism and all the things they say that happened that didn't happen. And I am so proud to be sitting here with you today. You don't know, when I met you earlier,
Yes.
last year,
Yes.
I was just almost in tears. And to have you back here today, it's very difficult for me to sit here without being emotional
Yeah.
because I know, look where he brought us from.
Yes.
You see, we walk with Dr. Mays. I'm a student at Spelman. You can come over here and say, hello, Dr. Mays,
Yes.
and he would almost know your name.
Yes.
You see?
And we would look out the window to see him walk from his
Yes.
house here down to Hogner's Hall.
Yes.
That erect, tall, elegant man.
Yes.
Do you know, I stayed with Dr. Mays and Mrs. Mays when I couldn't go home for Christmas because I didn't have the money,
Look
and
at you.
for Easter.
I understand that because I stayed down here. My mother said we got one ticket. The ticket to bring you in and the
Yeah.
ticket to bring you out.
Yes. Yeah.
From here to Georgianne on that train.
And you
but I
know-
did go home for Christmas.
Oh, yeah. You know who else taught us
Who was that?
to look out for someone else? Dr. Henry Morehouse, who this school is named for.
Okay.
He's the one who coined the phrase, the talented 10th.
Okay.
W.B. Du Bois just popularized it.
Listen now. Do
Dr.
you all have
Morehouse.
that? Do you all have that?
Dr. Morehouse, the man, I repeat, whom this school is named.
Yes, sir.
And I lived on Morehouse Street in Jackson, Mississippi, my second home house. So I came from Morehouse to Morehouse,
Come on now.
and I became aware of the rich legacy and tradition
Yes.
of Dr. Morehouse, who said that if I could get 10% of the blacks trained, who will be missionaries of help to the masses of black people, then we will be able to pass on from one generation to the next the good learning,
Yes.
the great spirit of service. Oh, yes. So I just could not get past it. It's in my bones, it's in my blood.
It's in my bones, it's in my blood. And it's in my bones, and my blood to thank all of you.
I have one question.
Okay.
And they can edit this part out, but I just want to capture this as a part of my lived history in terms of Mobile, Alabama.
Yes.
There's a story I was told that, because I remember asking, why don't we have pictures of Martin Luther King in Mobile, Alabama? Is it that our experience was so different than that of the others throughout the state of Alabama? And my godmother, who's been very politically active, said that he came, but he was turned around at the airport by the ministers because they said, we're going to handle our own Negro problem here. Is that a true story?
It could be, though I don't have the documentation. I tell you something else. When Dr. King came back home, there was some of us bourgeois blacks who did not want him here with the movement.
Okay.
And one of them was C.A. Scott, who was originally from Jackson, Mississippi.
Yes, and the paper didn't support him. What was the name of his paper? Dr. Scott's paper.
Atlanta Daily World.
The Atlanta Daily World. They did not support one thing. That's why we have the Atlanta Inquirer to this day.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what else? I literally saw old man King Sr.
Daddy King?
after Daddy King had been injured in that accident when he went to the convention, National Convention of NAACP in Philadelphia in 1961, going over the Penrose Bridge, he had to walk with a cane, all right? And in that meeting at Wheat Street Baptist Church, and I was there, this same Scott made a negative statement about Dr. King and the movement.
He did.
And Daddy King was so upset, he pulled back the cane up to hit Scott.
My
And
goodness.
people had to jump between
Wow.
him and Scott. I remember that meeting, down in the basement of Wheat Street Baptist Church.
I think there's been some healing since then.
Yeah.
But that's powerful what you said. And Doctor, did you get your answer?
Yes, it's probably true.
Yes.
She has never lied to me. She's been very active in the democratic process. She still serves today. And I just wanted to know why we didn't have pictures of him in Mobile, Alabama. And that's, I believe them both, but I wanted to know why.
What's important, I'm glad that we had this time.
I can tell you
because-
something else.
Okay, tell us something else. Do you have the,
I
first,
would.
do you have it? You have enough
Since
time?
we tell everything, I was at my mentor's funeral at the Masonic Temple in Jackson, and I have a picture in my possession that came from that book that was just written by Joy Reid,
Oh, okay,
Burley, and Meggers. Well, on the cover of that book is a picture of the recessional out of the Masonic Temple. And I was about on the 4th row, and Dr. King was there. But do you know, at the funeral, I was sitting next to Dr. King. And some of the high up folks in the NACP did not have the grace and respect to invite Dr. King to be on the platform at the funeral.
Oh my goodness.
Dr. King was on the main floor, and I was sitting next to him. That happened.
I believe it.
So you see, some of us
Some of us
have
to
been
this day.
small. And also, Gloucester Curran, and this is in written, who's the director of branches, did not rush to get security for Medgar Evers in Mississippi. He said that the NACP did not have the money. That is a fact. So you see, as human beings who are flawed,
Yes.
many of us have a lot to answer for.
Willie Lynch.
He did not show love for the group. And also, in Mississippi, and this is documented in many documents, the person who was used by the white racists to disenfranchise blacks was a black man. Did you know that? Know his name? Isaiah T. Montgomery. He was one of the blacks in the Mississippi legislature who voted with the whites to disenfranchise blacks. And you know what he sold us out for? He told the white folks of Mississippi, I'll work with you to keep blacks from voting
My.
if you give me some land to start a black town. And you know what became that black town?
No.
That's dead now? Mount Bayou, Mississippi. For some land. Land was important, but when it came to the issue of enfranchisement, he was the one who was used to come up with the idea of the poll tax. And also the rule that you would have to interpret a passage of the state constitution to qualify to vote. Isaiah T. Montgomery.
Well, we had some
So-
Isaiah T. Montgomerys in 2024 and the vote that's going on right now.
Right now, all skin folks
Ain't kinfolk.
and kinfolk.
That's a good place to end. That's a good place to end. All skin folk and kinfolk. You know what, Dr. Brown? This has been so good. If you don't mind, just for the audience, would you tell them your church, just because we will need it later, just in your voice, your name and your church in Los Angeles. I'm sorry, San Francisco.
Dr. Amos C. Brown, and I have been the senior pastor of Third Baptist Church for 48 years, going on 49. That's the oldest predominantly black Baptist church in the western United States. Third Baptist was organized on the anniversary of the abolition of slavery in the British West Indies on August the 1st, 1852. And the church has never had a split. Why? Because we've always been focused on the liberation of black folk. The church was organized in the home of a woman named Eliza Davis. Eliza Davis was from Albemarle County, Virginia. Her husband came to California in 1850 to mine gold. She later joined him after they had paid for their freedom in 1852. And it's powerful
It's
that
powerful.
the church was founded in what was a powder house. What was a powder house? A place that was for storing dynamite and ammunition on the corner of Hyde and Vallejo Streets. And that powder house was transformed into a 2-story home by the Davises, because white folks in First Baptist would not respect the humanity of black folks. First Baptist was founded in 1849, but they just wouldn't act right. Blacks had to sit in the balcony. They couldn't go to the
same God.
yeah, they couldn't go to the communion table at the same time that white folks did. It was this woman. And this is instructive for all the black folks and black males too. Now, some of that may be projectionism, and the enemy is pumping this story that black males don't want to support my member, who's a member of Third Baptist Church, our Vice President, Kamala Harris. But this woman founded Third Baptist, and it gives testimony to the fact that women can do anything that men can do.
Amen. Amen.
And we should get rid of this chauvinism
Yes.
and this misogyny. Even Jesus hung out with women.
He sure did. He said, and he even knew who touched him.
Yes.
Because he knew it was a woman.
Woman.
Come on now.
Yes.
We'll have church here
Yeah.
again.
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Brown.
Yeah, and I was kicked out of the California State Baptist Convention because I licensed and ordained a woman in 1984.
Let me.
And you know who that woman was?
Who was that?
Martha Simmons.
Oh my goodness.
Martha Simmons, who was from Chula, Mississippi,
Yes.
reared in Chicago. She went to Emory University and got a dual degree in law
And
theater.
MDiv.
Yes. Yes.
I know my daughter's Reverend Evelyn Sanders Swafford, who when she goes out to speak, has to stand on the side in some Baptist churches.
Yes.
She cannot go in the pulpit in 2024.
But I stood up for the right of a woman to be licensed and ordained. But I was kicked out of the California State Baptist Convention. But then they changed their mind. They changed their mind. Why? Because they missed Third Baptist's money. And wanted us to come back.
Yes.
I did go back after they invited me back, but that was a painful
Pill to swallow.
experience
Yes.
that happened. And you know who else was the first woman to preach in Third Baptist? Ella Mitchell.
Wow.
That's right.
You got a history.
Oh, yes, Ella. I knew Henry very well. He was field secretary for the American Baptist Churches. You see, Third Baptist was founded as American Baptist Church. And it wasn't until the 40s that it became duly aligned with the National Baptist under the leadership of my predecessor, Dr. Frederick Douglass Haynes, Sr. I'm sure you heard Frederick Douglass Haynes III. Well, his grandfather was my predecessor, and his son, Frederick Haynes Jr., succeeded him. I've had the longest tenure in the history of the church,
Praise the Lord
48
for you.
years.
And we turned out we cousins. You see, we're cousins now. So we're going to close out with, I closed out once before, we're going to close out for real this time with a thank you. We want to thank the Dr. Clarissa Myrick Harris and the project here at the Morehouse, I have the MMJ project. We want to thank especially Dr. Monique Earl Harris, Lewis. I don't know why I got this going on.
That's a story with my students.
Okay.
One of my students said it's amazing. He called me out. He mispronounced me.
I'm sorry, Dr. Monique Earl Lewis, because we can edit all this. Dr. Monique Earl Lewis for making sure and making all of this possible. you know, because we don't get this kind of history. This should be on national TV, and I'm hoping that Dr. Lewis and Morehouse come together and have this kind of information, because our students, these 2 students, 3 students, are the only 3 students who were here to get this information today. But this is something we need. You're a national treasure. You are a national treasure.
I must give you another footnote.
Okay.
Dr. W.B. Du Bois celebrated his 90th birthday at Third Baptist Church on April 13, 1958, which was the anniversary of the out-migration of blacks who left San Francisco back in 1858 because this town was so racist. Blacks could not serve on a jury to testify against a white person. Couldn't get jobs, couldn't get housing, and there was no education for them.
Not a whole lot has changed.
No. And it's also after that great Paul Robeson was maliciously maligned and falsely accused of being a communist because he stood up for his people. His first appearance when he came back to the United States was at Third Baptist Church on July the 26th, 1957. And when Dr. King went west with his civil rights movement, Southern Christian Leadership Conference, his first appearance was at Third Baptist on February the 25th, 1958.
But this is historical, and I wonder if you all would mind taking a picture of the 2 of us with me holding the map. This is the map, Doctor. Let me pull it out. Well, I think I have another one that we're going to be talking about today. This young man over here, Mr. Gooden, I'm sorry. This is a map that I pulled together. I'm going to hand it to you. That talks about when we marched out of Spelman, what we did, the whole march.
Right.
But guess what Mr. Gooden did? Mr. Gooden turned it into an animation, and we're going to talk about that at 1 o'clock today. And so I would like to have a picture with you holding the map. You hold yours, and I got mine for them to see it. And
Mr. Gooden,
Mr.
where are you from?
St. Louis.
Come on, step in here and take.
Where are you from?
St. Louis.
Come step right here and with the
You know,
map.
there's a young lady named Leslie Gooden who's from Maryland,
I was not aware.
in San Francisco, a member of Third Baptist.
Because does he need a map too? I got more than one. Do you want a map too, sir?
He'll show the other side.
Yes, you show the other side.
You stay in the middle.
Okay. All right, because the other side is what you did. Oh, this is memorable.
Okay, I can't see your face, Reverend Brown. Dr. Brown, got you. Oh, I missed it. Okay, thank you.
Is this good?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
We're gonna get everybody upstairs, because it is.
Yes, all right, so at this part right here, this is all the 21st century.
Oh, yeah.
When he makes the map move and all kind of information goes on back here. But I'm 20th century. I did
right.
the flat version,
All
so
right.
that's your version.
All
Thank you
right.
so much, thank you so much.